Now we're ready to start combining all these components that we've been talking about earlier in the class. If you think about what we've done up to now, we introduced the general concepts of supply and demand. We introduced this general concept of marginal analysis, arguably one of the most important chapters we cover in this class. And then we talked about elasticity, which is all about demand and understanding your customers. Then we switched gears and we talked about production and costs. So if you really think about it, what we did was we spent some time on the demand side of things with elasticities. Well, why do we care about demand? Because that is our revenue side of our business. Why do we care about production and costs? Because that is our supply side of the business and costs. So profits are made up of revenues minus costs. If you really want to understand profits, which is ultimately what we're up to in this class, is how do we make a profit with our business? To understand that, you have to understand both the revenue side of things and the cost side of things. So in chapters 11 and 12, we kind of start putting those two pieces together and say, all right, now we've said something about revenues, now we've understood about costs. The point is, now we're here to make money. So how do we figure this out? All right, to start this discussion, we need to kind of refer back to something that was first introduced in chapter 1, but I'm going to review it briefly here. And that is this idea of market structure and what kind of situation does a firm operate in. And there's basically 4 different components to our market structure. Number 1 is how many firms are there in the industry? How many firms are you competing against? Is it a lot, or is it just a few, or are you the only one? So the number of firms. Secondly, how different or how alike are the products being sold in the market? So if you're talking about something like electronics, some of those products may be very different. They have different features, they have different prices, they do different things. Whereas if you're talking about something like, let's say, corn, the product is essentially identical. You know, Farmer Joe's corn is basically identical to Farmer Sally's corn. Corn is corn. So second component of an industry is how alike or different are the products being sold. A third type of thing that we consider is how much control does the firm have over price in the marketplace. And as we talk about with one extreme, which is in chapter 11, the firm basically has no control over it. It basically has to accept whatever the market price is. But other firms and many other industries have a lot of control over price. They have a lot of say in how much they want to charge for their product. So a third component is how much price control. A fourth component is how easy is it for new firms to come into your market or your industry. So here's the 4 components we're going to think about. How many firms are there? How similar or how different are the products? How much control over price do we have? And fourthly, how easy is it for new firms to come in to the business? That will dictate everything about how a firm operates. So in chapter 11, we take these 4 components and say, well, let's go to the extremes. There's many firms all selling exactly the same thing. They don't have any control over price, and it's very easy for new firms to come into the industry. Well, if you can imagine, all those components say it's a highly competitive business. Lots of firms, easy to come in, selling all the same things, no control over price. That's perfect competition, and that's what we study in chapter 11. As we move into chapter 12, we make that a little more real world. We say, well, yeah, there might be a lot of firms in the industry, but they all sell something that's a little bit different from each other. And because of that, they have at least some control over price, even though there might be a lot of new firms that could come in. That's called monopolistic competition. And then the other extreme is, well, what if there's only one firm in the industry selling a unique product, has a lot of control over price, and it's really hard for other firms to get in? Guess what? That's a monopoly. And we've all seen the actions of how monopoly firms behave. All right, well, let's go back to our perfect competition situation. We've got many sellers producing the same thing, no control over price, easy to get in the industry. The next three things we do with our firm is every firm has to answer the next 3 questions. Every firm, be it perfect competitor, monopolistic competitor, monopolist, General Motors, Exxon, or Farmer Joe down the street. So every firm has to answer 3 questions. Number 1, what product, how much of the product are you going to produce? When you get up and decide for this year, how much are you going to make? How many products are you going to make? You're going to generate 100 widgets or 10 widgets or 1,000 widgets? Or, in other words, what is our level of output that maximizes profits? Well, as you're going to find in studying Chapter 11, that magic output level is where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. In other words, the additional dollar you made in revenue is exactly equal to the additional dollar that it cost you. No more, no less. That's exactly the maximum profit level. Don't confuse marginal revenue with total revenue. And marginal cost is not total cost. We want to maximize the gap between total revenue and total cost. That's true. We want to maximize that gap. What I'm talking about is marginals. The additional revenue you make is exactly equal to the additional cost that it cost you, no more, no less. So that's number 1. How much do we want to produce? Where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. Your second question every firm has to ask, well, how much am I going to charge for my output? If you're a perfect competitor, you don't get a choice. The market tells you what you're going to charge. If you're a monopolistic competitor or a monopoly, you have some say in this. So you're going to look to your demand curve to say, well, how much can I charge? From question 1, I've answered, how much do I want to produce? Question 2 says, well, now go up the demand curve and, well, what's the maximum I could charge? And that's what I'm going to charge. And then finally, the third question we need to ask is, do we stay in business or do we shut down? And that is all driven by whether we're in the short run or the long run. So in the long run, if we're not making profits, we're going to shut down. End of story. But in the short run, that question's a little more complicated, because in the short run, we have fixed costs and variable costs. If I can still operate in the short run and cover all my variable costs, I'm probably better off at least operating for some period if I can cover all my variable costs. And if I have something left over, I can help at least pay for some of my fixed costs. Because if I shut down, I lose all my fixed costs. So in the short run, if I can cover all my variable costs and have some money left over to pay at least some fixed costs, I'm still losing money, but not as much as if I shut down. Then it's probably worth it to keep going. So that's the rule of thumb in the short run. If I can cover all my variable costs, you want to still continue to operate. If I cannot cover my variable costs, let's give it up and go do something else. And then finally, in the long run, for a perfect competitor, because we have freedom to come into the industry, new firms can come in. One of the key insights we need to understand about perfect competition is that in the long run, if the firms in the industry are making money, if they're making a profit, then new firms are going to come into the industry because it's a profitable industry. So profits are like a signal to resources. This is one of the really, really important insights in economics. Profits are a very important indicator for other businesses. Hey, they're making money over there. Maybe that's a good place for my business to go, or for new entrepreneurs to start up a business. So the idea, the objective is to maximize profits. Resources are going to go where the profits are. If firms in an industry are losing money, well, guess what? They're going to get out of the business. They're going to go do something else. So profits, negative profits in that case, or losses, are also a signal to resources. Hey, let's go do something else. We're not making any money here. So that's a key thing that I want you to keep in mind as you read this chapter. That we've got firms deciding for profit maximization how much to produce, where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. What price can I charge, and do I stay in business or not? And then in the long run, if I'm making economic profits, that means new firms are probably going to come in and enter my industry. As always, if you have questions or comments, please let me know.